might get started now. Hi, everybody. I am Rupal Isman, the director of the Sydney Knowledge Hub here at the University of Sydney, built on Gadigal land. I'd like to acknowledge their custodianship of this very rainy part of Sydney and welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that we have with us here today. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on wherever you're calling in from, because you're probably in very different places. The Sydney Knowledge Hub is just over a year old. Our mission is to help researchers connect to the outside world. And, we do this most visibly through our co-working space, which a few of us are calling in from right now. We have about 20 organizations that use this space as their primary co-working, their primary place of work. About half of those are external organizations collaborating with the university, and the other half are IP-heavy organizations that are coming out, that are from researchers at the university. We also do this by exposing researchers here at the university to industry and showing the value of collaboration with business, and in this case, working outside of the university sector. I think it's well known that there's a mismatch between the volume of the incredible talent that the university is churning out and the positions that are available within the academic sector. Many of you are joining here today have are current higher degree researcher students, or are postdocs thinking that may be thinking about, like, how do I get a job in this area that I'm really passionate about? Well, digital health is a burgeoning sector, and it's a priority area for the university and for the federal government. And for these investments to really realize their potential, we need people like you to work within. And to be honest, for Australia to be economically competitive on a global scale, we need more of all of you, one of our biggest and arguably the most underutilized national assets that we have, to work more with and within businesses. So today we have 4 guests from pretty amazing companies doing innovative work. This isn't a job fair today. This is hopefully an inspirational session to show you that your research background can lead to some fantastic opportunities in the private sector. Sarah Lacroix, our community manager, will be leading this conversation today. Sarah.
Thanks, Rupal. And hi, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm the community manager at the Sydney Knowledge Hub. I work with Rupal, and I'm really glad to have this panel here today with some of our members like Mo, but also, new friends, Annie, Thomas, and Robert, who will be talking to us about what they are doing in their companies. So just to give you a bit of context, so Mo is one of the co-founders of the Tech2Dex. He graduated from PhD a couple of years ago and has been an amazing member of the space. His desk is a couple of desks away from mine, so we see each other every day. Annie works for Coviu. She's a senior telehealth consultant, also at the University of Queensland. Thomas is engineering research manager at Scimita Ventures, and Robert is the CEO and founder of Arya Research. So I'll get them to say a bit more about what they're doing. Maybe we can start with Mo. Can you briefly introduce yourself, your business and your role, and how you got here?
Okay, hi Sarah, and thank you for having me. So my name is Mosulai. I am the co-founder of Tech2Dex, and Tech2Dex basically is an online platform that offers clinicians the chance to test their performance in detecting abnormalities in medical images, and also learn from any mistakes that they make in this environment, so they can learn from their mistakes in a safe environment. Now, the idea about Tech2Dex came about because radiologists don't get much feedback usually, and that they don't know if they make a mistake until something really bad happens, right? So it's a very simple idea that we came up with, but it's very effective, and we saw a lot of great results. We started in mammography, screening mammography, and now we're working with COVID images, lung cancer, dust disease, and image quality, and many other modalities in medical imaging. Now, my role here is the CTO, which is in a startup. It means that I basically do everything related to technology. So I build the platform, I talk to the developers, I design any new test that is needed. I translate clinician needs into a design that the developers would understand. And yeah, so that's what I do, and that's who we are.
Thanks, Mo. Yeah, no, that's great. And I'll come back to you a bit later, but maybe I can get Annie to introduce herself, because I think what you do is really interesting as well, Annie, because you kind of have this double hat. So you'll be able to talk about two sides of the research career that you've taken.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, and thank you for inviting me today. So I'll start with Coviu. Coviu is a video telehealth platform, but it's been specifically designed for healthcare organisations. So at the moment, we support 60,000 Australian clinicians, healthcare clinicians, to provide telehealth. We are a CSIRO spin-out company, so we have great pedigree. And as you can imagine, last year provided us with exponential growth. We went from doing 450 calls per day to 25,000 calls a day. So it was a huge growth, and it was at that point when I joined the organisation. On the other side, at Centre of Online Health, we the centre's been running for about 20 years, and I work a couple of days a week with them to work on different sorts of research projects. So that's general research activities that we would consider like evaluations, and there's some consultancy works in there, and it also enables me to publish. I guess with Coviu, I am leading and managing and directing their research programs. So there's two kind of elements to it. We often get researchers come to us to say that we're doing telehealth research and we would like to use Coviu as part of that research. So I manage those. And then also around developing collaborations between our customers and universities to further the product. So we, you know, the blue sky thinking, what are we, where do we want the product to go? And then also there's the internal research, which our existing customers do focus groups and interviews with them to see where they want the product to go. And then the final arm I would say that I get involved with is advocacy work. Telehealth has really found its legs with the pandemic, and so there's still quite a lot of work to be done in that policy area, and so I support the CEO in working around those issues as well.
That's awesome. I have a couple of questions on, you know, the role of research when you have a bunch of challenges related to massive growth that's completely external, you know, conditions. But first, Thomas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Sarah. So I work for a company called Scimita Ventures, which you can probably see behind my head here. So what we are is an agile technology development company. We actually work across a multitude of different industries. So I got my foot in the door because we work on medical devices, but we're also working in the hospitality, pest management, and hydrogen energy spaces at the moment. Something that we do a little bit different to what some other similar companies do is that we have a really heavy focus on research and experiments when we're developing all of our products and ideas. So that's my role here, is to lead our research and development activities in each of our different deep tech projects. I also lead our team of experimentalists, which broadly speaking, equivalent to research scientists in the academic space, and just making sure that we're following best practice throughout all of our different projects.
That's great. And we had one of your experimentalists, Ashman, on one of our panels last month as well, who I had a great insights to bring as well. So keen to hear more about this. And Robert, last but not least, you've been experimenting for years now. So can you tell us a bit more about Arya Research and how you got there?
Yeah, so thanks, Sarah. Thanks for the kind intro. Yeah, and welcome to everyone. It's awesome to hopefully see you in a minute because we just know there's 38 people out there. Yeah, so we, Arya Research is a deep tech development company. I like really seriously difficult problems, so that's why I'm in this space. Essentially, we're developing a workable, scalable solution to blindness. And this is not for the faint of heart because, as you guys might know, there's been some pretty heavy, deep science research in this space over the last 25 years, particularly the Bionic Eye Project in Australia, and there's a competitor out in the United States. We're really interested in engaging with the research community. We currently have, I believe, 7 chief investigators between University of Sydney and UTS that we're working with. We're actively trying to bring in and recruit postdocs in particular, but really the message is this, which is probably a little bit different from the other the folks in the panel, is that we have a very strong belief that major innovation typically comes from outside established channels. So we're a small, scrappy startup, but my background is building small, scrappy startups into very big companies. So we're looking for people who are really interested in doing some breakthrough work. To quickly outline what our technology does, because I'm biased and it is fascinating, is that we found a way to deliver spatial and semantic perception to the blind without actually dealing with the visual field at all. So this is a huge amount of, this is really interesting research, and we had a breakthrough last month when our design approach actually exceeded the performance of the Bionic Eye system, we believe. So this is informal at the moment, we're about to do clinical studies and whatnot. This is very exciting for us because we built out our critical concept in this period of 6 months, working with researchers and engineers and cobbled the thing together, and hey, we actually got something really, really interesting here. So the challenge for us in the coming years is to basically prove out this technology, pursue a clinical commercialization pathway, and go out there and see if we can actually build the next cochlea out of Australia. And that's it. That's what we're up to.
Thanks, Robert. And do not hesitate if you have questions. There's a Q&A box at the bottom. You can ask your questions in there to the panelists. We see them before they get published, and we'll try to answer them live as much as we can. Now the next question, we have a lot of higher degree research students in the audience, people that are currently studying, master research or PhD, or are just after PhD, or PhD supervisors actually, that are interested in how can you land, how did you land a job in the private sector, and how did your research background lead you there? Mo, did you want to start?
Of course, yeah. So my research background is actually medical physics, and my undergrad was in physics, but I would say that at the moment, medical physics has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. But the idea of the research is that you keep your eye open for all areas of your research and everything that's near to it. How I landed into the private sector, I think I've always had something for business. My first business was an internet cafe, maybe 2 decades ago, but it just didn't stop. I've always loved to work for myself, as a business owner. So I did my PhD because I worked in IT for a while, right? And then in IT, because I'm really good at computers and IT, but then I missed the the research part and the physics part. So I did my PhD in physics, And after I finished my PhD, I guess I was lucky enough to find a way to combine my passion for research and my skills in technology to create Detectedix and you know, combine both into a career, I guess. I am still a researcher at Sydney Uni, but you know, I always prefer business. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and Detectedix had some major milestones last year. So kudos to you and the rest of the team. They received a grant of $1 million from the federal government when COVID hit to build their capability in helping radiologists better detect COVID-19. So yeah, you've done really well. We're super glad to have you at the Sydney Knowledge Hub. Thomas, do you want to go? Because we've had this conversation before. I thought it was quite interesting, and actually starting this conversation with you is how I got the idea for this event. So do you want to go?
Yeah, sure, can do. So much like I think a lot of our audience, I actually did a PhD in the School of Medical Sciences at USyd. And in that role, my research was largely focused on developing and optimizing drugs, essentially. So I was working in the pharmacology department. Sort of at that point, I thought the natural progression, that was all I really understood, was that you go and do a postdoc next, which I did do for a little while. But when it was time to find the next one, I really struggled to get the motivation to actually pursue that. So I had to look at what else was out in the world, and I found a job at a startup that was quite closely aligned with my technical skills. So I gave that a go, and when I was working there, I was really intrigued by the commercial aspect of the things that they were doing. But at the same time, everyone had sort of come from an academic background as well, and I felt like the startup was quite academic focused, and it didn't quite work so well. But I guess it gave me a different experience and made me realize, hey, the world is actually bigger than what I think it is. At that point, I started speaking to people, and thankfully, I had a friend who knew my current boss and put me in contact. And at the time, I was really hesitant to even talk to my current boss because I guess I felt like a bit of a fraud in that I didn't actually have the background, the skills or anything to move out into industry. But I really quickly realized that I was wrong. And it was kind of the best career move I've made so far to date.
Yeah, and this is really why we want to do these events, because PhD students have a lot of qualities that they don't know about, because what they asked to do while they study is really, write papers and publish. And there's so much of what they do that could be really useful in terms of mindset, experience, and skills that can be useful in the private sector. So that's really great. And I'd love to get the tips from the rest of the panel as well on how to find these people that are hiring and how to sell yourself as well. Annie, maybe you have a bit of experience, and Robert as well. You both work with researchers. What do you think are these things that like PhD students are short of selling themselves off, but that they have a lot of?
Annie, do you want to go first? I'll go first then. So yeah, sorry, I put the burrows out the window. Very briefly, so what's really appealing? So I'm a startup guy. I love building new technology. I'm interested in breakthrough innovation, and that doesn't come from large companies typically. It doesn't come from senior experienced people. It comes from people with the energy and the ideas to actually give things a go because they don't know they can't do it. As Thomas pointed out, he really didn't know what he was capable of or the value of his capability until he actually got into an environment that could actually take advantage of and wanted that. So I guess the message from my perspective is that innovators are really hungry for people who have curious minds, capability and skill set. And that's basically, your postgrads out there. But there's another thing too that you really have to show, which is an ambition and willingness to actually take risk and also put your as I say, put your ass on the line to actually try new things. So at least from my perspective, we bet everything on black. So that's everyday business for us. Our future to eat at the end of the day is to succeed. And that sounds incredibly risky and scary in some respects, but it's the only way to actually get stuff done quickly and efficiently, especially in the Australian environment, which is, has challenges in terms of successfully commercializing deep tech technology. We don't have a great track record of it in Australia. But figuring that stuff out and making it work is also what we do in the Australian entrepreneurship community to actually make stuff work. And there's always other opportunities. And Thomas could probably attest to this, that, once you actually get into this environment, you realize there is a whole nother world and a whole bunch of other opportunities, and they are plentiful. So more than figuring out how to sell yourselves to us, I'd encourage you to think about what you can just bring to the table and think creatively and just risk a little bit, because there are great ideas out there. For instance, our latest postgraduate recruit, we recruit globally. So the latest recruit came out of University of Kyushu. He's in Japan and he's Spanish and speaks a bit of English. But we found him because we are actively hunting. We found this guy doing some work in our space and it was innovative and interesting. So we called him up. We actually reached out to him. Like, we're in Australia, he's in Japan. He's like, who the hell are you guys? I'm like, well, we heard from a friend of a friend that you're doing this thing. This is really interesting. Would you like to pursue this with the company? He's like, of course. My first job, absolutely brilliant. Fast forward 6 months later, he has heavily evolved his skill set. He's now, pretty much expert level in machine vision and application of that in disability. He has helped engineers, been central to developing our first proof of concept technology, which, as I mentioned earlier, we've just demonstrated outperforms the bionic eye after, I think it was 23 years of work, bionic eyes, and over $100 million spent. This guy, in his engineering effort and applied sciences, managed to actually help produce something that outperforms the bionic eye. Is he proud? Yes. Are his professors proud? Oh yeah. Will he be writing an extra paper on that? You betcha. But those opportunities and accolades that come are because he took that leap, took that step.
If I can jump in, just
go for it.
To add. So both Thomas and Robert mentioned a very good point, which is networking, right? If you're looking for a job or a career, you need to keep your network up and updated, and just you need people to know that you're looking. If you don't say it, you won't get it. And the other point is that with your network, you just need to get personal, I guess, because you need a champion that would fight for you behind closed doors, and that's how you land a job. So networking is very important, and just say it. I need to do this. If you find anything that's related, let me know. And that's very important.
Yeah, I completely agree with this. There's so much power, in wishing aloud what you want, letting other people know. And most people, they just want to be helpful. They're not expecting anything in return. Like, they will help you find a job. And, when they help you find a job, they also help someone find an employee. So they kind of like get double favors back. So they have all a great interest in helping you. And Annie, with your position both at the university and at Coviu, do you see two different mindsets of the people you work with in the different places, or do you think it could be like more together?
I'm really lucky. I work with two really great teams. They are very different teams. They work at different speeds as well. Typically in a startup company, I hadn't experienced that environment before, so that was new to me. I've actually got 20 years of health experience working in the health sector before I did the PhD. I see the two jobs work for me really well together. In academia, you bring rigor, you bring a way of thinking about something, you bring so much clarity and have a very deep knowledge. So I see that can all inform the work that I do at Coviu. When I first started working at Coviu, I actually was advising and supporting enterprise customers on how to roll out telehealth. I'd actually met the CEO when I was a consultant. I had my own consultancy, and we had a conversation about me working with them, but it kind of at the time didn't go anywhere. And then what my learnings from Coviu give my academic work is a really deep understanding of how the theory of implementation science actually happens in the real world. So we can write heaps of papers and we can synthesize all the primary research, but there's nothing actually like sitting in with a company and watching all the dynamics and watching all the challenges play out in front of you. So I think that understanding can then really inform how I view my academic work. So I don't see them, for me, they work really well. I think what people have said is really important about taking risks, putting it out there. When I first met Sylvia, I said, "Oh, I'd really like to work with you. That sounds really interesting." and a couple of years later, when the timing was right for both of us, that's when I walked into the eye of a storm. So I am actually, the most important thing is where my family and where I live in my life. And I actually live on the far north coast. So I don't have those opportunities like people living in cities. And so I think that's my choice, but I have had to work really hard at making sure that I create those opportunities. So it comes from within. I mean, now remote working is to a penny. So all those barriers where people would have looked at me before saying, well, she doesn't live in Sydney or she doesn't live in Brisbane, they've gone. But you've got to create those opportunities to yourself.
No, I couldn't agree more with you. Just to talk about the entrepreneur kind of career path, because we've talked a bit about working in a company, but Mo, what did you learn as an entrepreneur? You said you've been building businesses for a while, and you work with another researcher, your co-founder Patrick. How did this help, your entrepreneur kind of background with building Detector Decks and your research background? How did it all come together?
So if you think about it, research and business are the same, right? With one small yet important difference. In business and in research, you take up a project, you plan for the project, for your idea, you do your research, you do your homework, you network, and then you execute. You need funding, and you wait for the results. So that's business, right? And research at the same time. The difference is that with business, as Robert says, you take risks. In research, you're safe. Your idea, you plan it, you execute it, and your results, you just publish it, whatever the results are. That's what it is. You change your method, maybe to study something else, but at the end of the day, it is what you get. But in business, you risk everything every day. So I guess the one thing that's I learned more from entrepreneurship and business than research is to take risks more. And when I was in my PhD, there was a what can I say? There was a chance. You can take the chance and risk. You're getting a job as an academic, or you go and create a business and do a startup. So I took the chance, and we built a platform and a startup, and we're doing great now. So take risks.
Hi, can I follow up on Mo just for a minute? That I want to talk about that. It sounds all terrible and frightful.
It's not.
But
It's
Mo's
not. Risks are good.
exactly. That's
Yeah, no, definitely.
Mo's about to tell us all about is that the risk comes with the flip side, which is obviously reward. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And the nature of what Mo does and what I do is to actually have an educated guess to start with about, hey, I think things are going to go in this direction, and then do the research and then flesh it out and actually start to get the reward. And this is a phenomenal thing because, success in your career, particularly early, can be send you on a profoundly different trajectory. So, and what people, generally postgraduates and younger folks, don't realize is that you've got a window to actually make mistakes and recover. And that gets harder the older you get. As soon as you have kids and cars and houses and stuff, your latitude to actually, your appetite for risk drops significantly. So when you're still in your 20s, before you get too old, there is a window to actually make a significant impact on your career path by actually taking some risks and opening the potential to actually receive some reward from it. And that example of that recent postgraduate we hired is significant. I managed to turn around the other day and saying, do you realize that you built the technology with your own hands that's, exceeded the performance of, $100 million, 35, researchers and 20 odd years worth of work? He said, oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, wow. I actually feel really damn good about that. And said, do you realize that this also opens up huge opportunities for you as the guy that actually achieved this? He goes, yeah, you're right. And he's like, it's fired in my head. Oh my God, I'm on a level here. I'm not just, this isn't just my first job post-grad. I'm actually now an expert in the field. Looking around going, I actually am, because I'm the guy who built this and figured it out. So taking the risk, that's the only way you get to the real rewards. And there's really two streams out there. One is to work in a larger company and do your bit, and that works. The other stream is where the adventure's at, and that's what Mo's done. That's what I do in my background, and it's actually invigorating and exciting because you're actually risking something, and that matters because what you do can matter. End rant. Sorry.
No, it's all good. And actually, that brings, we talk a lot about the impact that research commercialization makes at the Sydney Knowledge Hub. Does anyone want to talk about the impact of their work and how they felt like it might have changed or not since they finished their PhD or focused a bit less on their academic career? Does anyone want to talk about impact?
Well, when you start your PhD, you always think, at least from my side, right? I think, oh, I'm going to change the world with my PhD thesis, right? And you try and do your best and all that. But then when you finish, you find out that you have done something amazing in your PhD, but there is a lot more that's coming once you finish, because you're only at the first step of your research life. And you can make a lot more impact by implementing that research and doing a lot more where that came from. So your research, if you, it can change the world, right? So in big ways. My research really, in my PhD, I studied the radiation dose in mammography and all that. And yeah, it does change the way that women look at mammography in a way, and it makes it safer for them to actually go ahead and do screening mammography. But when I took research further and looked at mammography from a different angle, and I started Detected X with Patrick, we're actually helping radiologists become better and in detecting abnormalities, and that reflects into women's lives and giving them that more quality life, right? For women that have cancer and any other diseases that we do as well. So the lesson is just keep going. Your research life doesn't stop when you finish your PhD. It starts. Yeah.
I think for me, my PhD was actually focused on developing an intervention for older people for patient education and to overcome social isolation. It probably seems really old hat now because we were using Zoom and we were doing groups by video conferencing, and we wanted to know whether that was acceptable and whether older people could do that. And off the back of that, I actually, my postdoc was actually using similar technology and implementation, but with dementia caregivers. And so for me, my impact doesn't sit so much in making amazing technology. My impact sits with how people use it and how it becomes accessible and what they use it for. And as I've delivered much of that work as well, I'm acutely aware of the impact that we had on a dementia caregiver, say, living in Rockhampton or living in very rural Tasmania, and for them finally being able to talk to somebody else who's going through similar issues and make that connection. And for me, that was a real turning point to see how much it had changed people's lives and how much that they wanted to carry on with those groups without a health professional. So it actually created a social support network for them that didn't actually need any health input. So, and that's why I moved to Coviu, because for me, helping organizations who had never had any idea of using telehealth or didn't know where to start, where to rolling it out in their organizations. And now we've suddenly got customers who are putting it in their tenders to provide services to the Northern Territory or to places that were generally very underserviced with services. And it's a huge issue, the inequality in Australia. Particularly in rural areas, people just don't have access to services that people in the cities do. So a lot of my work has come from that place of overcoming health inequalities.
I just follow up on Annie. She makes a great point that I think the postgraduates really be thinking about. I mean, hopefully we're trying to get across the idea that you just don't finish postgrad and then go find a job. There's a few different pathways, and Mo and I have been talking about the more entrepreneurial pathways, and you can go work at a big company. But the key to wherever you wind up, where you want to go, you should wrap your head around a problem of sorts, or start thinking about ideas that might be coming from your research or different areas. You need to expose yourself to the problems of the world, and that will put you head and shoulders above your competing postgraduates in finding a role. So if you have some idea or some angle or some research about, for instance, the inequality of care, in rural Australia, I'm really into and passionate about the inequality of care for the disabled, of people who are living with a disability, and I shouldn't say that is absolutely wrong the way I said that. Then you've got an edge, because then you're thinking about how your research can be applied at the end of the day. So research doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your knowledge doesn't happen in a vacuum. It contacts the real world. So the greater understanding you can show of real world problems or opportunities, even if you want to target a job and you're sending off 5 resumes a week, look at what the companies are doing. Look at the problems they're trying to solve. Frame your experience and capability in a question to them. How are you pursuing this? I have some ideas. You'll stand out very, very quickly.
I think that's very similar. I once read something that really resonated with me, and it was, you don't attach yourself to an organization, or you attach yourself to an idea or a cause or something that you're really passionate about. I was very lucky in my PhD to research something I'm passionate about, telehealth. I think it will really change how we deliver healthcare and make it more equitable. And by attaching myself to that has then made me look wider than just, oh, I've done a PhD, then there must be the normal academic path.
No, and that fits really well with one of the questions we had in the Q&A chat box. And please send your questions in the Q&A chat box. We have about 15 to 20 more minutes of this panel, so it's time to send your questions. Someone said that they have spent all their focus around academia and don't have job experience. How do they position themselves in the job market and what would the entry opportunities they can look at without being labeled as overqualified?
You want to have a go? No one else jumped in. Okay, so I think to rehash what I just said before, if you can frame a problem or frame your passions and interests in terms of the job opportunities you're seeking, you're halfway there. If you just say, here's my qualifications, here's how I scored, here's what I did my thesis on, you're going to get, unless someone's actively looking for exactly what you're after, the chances are actually very low of rising to the top and securing a role. So I would say if you're lacking those ideas or experience, go expose yourself. Do a little bit of networking. Things like, for instance, we went and sponsored a hackathon for Sumo, which is the robotics group at Sydney University a few months ago. And indirectly, as a result of that, 30 students actually managed to pick up a contract to build robots for NASA. Like, they're building stuff for JPL. It's extraordinary. Like, JPL's like, really? You've got a bunch of, they're actually turning up the work and the technology, and that's great. So my point is, one thing leads to another, leads to another. You need to expose yourself to opportunities, which means networking with people. And you might very quickly start to frame an idea of how you position yourself. There might be a contact, but actually just, sitting on Seek and pushing out resumes will not get you very far. You need to contact and expose yourself to other people. So network. If there's social industry groups and events, just sign up and turn up and drink the wine, have the beer, eat the slice of pizza, and talk to people. That's the key. That'll make all the difference.
I had a really nice example the other day. So working in that implementation change space, there's actually very few people that work in that space, and suddenly, in the digital world, there's loads of jobs in this area. And one example that someone was telling me was that they had read every implementation change book going, knew all of those texts, but actually have volunteered and actually put some of those practices into the volunteering role that they were doing. And that's how they managed then to turn up at interview, and actually it wasn't paid experience, but they showed an enthusiasm and a focus and a drive to say, this is passionate, this is where I want to go.
I might just jump in again. We're getting a few interesting questions here. Sorry if I'm blabbing too much, but there's a question around how do I actually show I've got experience to actually secure a job when I've been looking at, like, do my PhD, and that's all I've had to focus on. Fair enough. There's a few ways. I mean, and also there's this talk about, how do we show industry that we actually have some relevant experience, where, this is a chicken and egg problem. Okay, you can't get a industry experience without a job. You can't get a job without industry experience. You got to figure that out. One of them is to simply, and I think just Annie hinted at that, is if you can get a hold of an unpaid internship, and this doesn't mean scouring the papers and looking out online to see if there's any available. You knock on the door or find someone at the company that you would like to work at and say, hey, I'd really like to work with you guys. I'm willing to put in a bit of time. Can I shadow someone or come in and just help? And you wouldn't believe how far that would put you ahead, because I'm a CEO. I recruit people regularly. I've hired thousands of people. I can't tell you how rare that is. And every person who has come to me in my company, in one of my previous companies, and said, I really like what you guys are doing. I'd like to work with you. I know you haven't got anything advertised, but I've got this skill set. Can I come in? Each person who has done that, I've actually hired to a man and woman. Like, if you put yourself out there, yeah, good things happen.
I just have a couple of quick points, if that's okay. Just with networking, I think, I don't know, networking, you imagine going to some event and talking to complete strangers, but networking is also as simple as talking to friends, talking to your current colleagues, and just making it known what you want to do and what you're interested in. That is also a form of networking that's far less daunting, that I don't think people realize is actually networking. And another thing I want to point out is it's a really hard thing to almost let go of, but when you're doing a PhD, you're almost becoming a world expert in a really specific discipline. And it's not necessarily those really specific skills that you're developing that are the most valuable moving into new roles. It's probably very unlikely that you're going to find a job that uses those exact technical skills, but those transferable skills that you're developing by doing a PhD are incredibly important. And that's actually what we as a company sort of focus on more when we're hiring, is who has those right transferable skills, who is a good value fit for us, rather than who has done the specific work before.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially on the networking bit. It seems very daunting, and it seems like cold emailing people on LinkedIn, but it's much easier than that, and it's just talking to the people you know and thinking out loud about what you want. There's a question I would like to answer, and I would love your point of view on it as well. Any recommendation how to start something ourselves, a startup, when we finish our PhD, how to find the right partners? Hi, I'm Sarah. So the Sydney Knowledge Hub is a great place at the University of Sydney. We have a few members that are current PhD students that are building a startup out of their research. Mo went through the Incubate program. I think Scimita actually also went through Incubate, but I'm not completely sure. So check out Incubate program. There are a lot of resources at the University of Sydney, and it's really being more and more integrated for students and staff and PhD students to start a business and know where to start. So I really recommend checking out the Proto program that's run by Incubate. It will go in the email I sent after this, all the workshops they have. They also have a program called Proto X that's focused on research. And I don't know, Mo, do you want to talk a bit about Incubate as well from your experience as a participant?
Yeah, so Incubate is a University of Sydney program that helps you translate your ideas into a business, whether it's successful or not, that's up to you. But the idea is that you apply for the program, and you get in for 4 months, where they basically mentor you on how to build a successful business. You get well, now it's webinars, but meetings with an advisory team that are all successful in business, and they go with you step by step. They basically teach you how to talk to customers, how to build your product, how to everything from A to Z. And at the end of the program, you pitch your idea to a room full of investors, and you hope that someone really likes the idea and would like to come in with you and basically invest in your idea. So that's Incubate. Yeah, it's a great program. Yeah.
I've got another suggestion to throw in as well. Speed matters, and I'm sure Mo will attest to this too. There's opportunities out there all the time, but they're fleeting. So just to mention that this afternoon, Fish Burners, I don't know if you guys know of it. Biggest startups, I think it's still the biggest startup hub in the Southern Hemisphere, is in the middle of Sydney. It's over in York Street, near above Wynyard Station. And every Friday, they typically have a pitch night. So this is, 60 or 70 entrepreneurs and investors gathering around. It's a little bit like watching the Lions feed, but that's fine. But basically, people with ideas get up in front, nervous as hell, and they pitch it. And the audience discusses, and maybe it's crap and that doesn't matter. Maybe it's fantastic and brilliant. And someone picks up a check and that sort of stuff, but it's over beers and it's all pretty casual. But if you want to taste about entrepreneurship and understand what startups are about, or think you might want to join one, this is probably one of the best places to actually go hang out. And it's pretty much every Friday afternoon. I think it's at 5 p.m. tonight, and they're going to be pitching marketplaces. Maybe there's some health stuff there. I don't know. But that's a regular opportunity that if you're not out there and connecting with, peers in the business community and the startup community, this is an opportunity that you guys should give a crack. So at 5 p.m., maybe you guys should turn up.
Yeah, to add to that, if you search for the startup environment, and there is quite a few startup incubator programs in Sydney. So, there's a whole lot of platforms that you can learn about through the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, and in digital health, there's a program called End Health that's specific for digital health businesses that really help you around all the legal aspects of digital health, which we really recommend this program, and they have different stages as well for ideas to like fully formed business. There's the question, how can you know that your idea for a business will be successful? So Robert picked that one.
And this is the disappointing answer. You don't.
No.
I don't. I know Mo doesn't.
No.
You only find out when you're successful, which means the answer is just try. Okay? Talk to people about your idea. Don't guard it. And Mo will attest to this. Ideas are really cheap. There's ideas everywhere. It's execution that counts. So people that try, open the doors, get to the opportunities. There's lots of people with ideas. Maybe 5% of those actually try, and at that 5%, maybe only 5% of those people actually succeed. It's a tough job, but if you're committed to the task and you do have a good idea, or willing to modify your idea as you go to actually meet a need, you can succeed. So yeah, there's no good answer on that, Corey, except just to try.
Yeah, if I can add to that as well, in business you do an educated risk, right? So if you're not good at business, you don't know business. That's why we say go to the incubator programs. They will help you figure out if this is actually going to work or not. So they take you through the process. You test your system, you test your market, see if there's acceptance of your product. And yeah, so maybe that's a way to start. But as Rob said, you don't know. Yeah.
We have another question. You all seem to be quite connected with your university still. Was that by choice? How do you keep up that connection?
Yeah, so I say I stayed by choice. My passion is research. So I wanted to be at the university. Actually, I finished my PhD to become an academic, but then it's just, you change direction all your life, and that's how it became. So now I'm a postdoc, I'm doing research. And how do you keep that connection is by keeping an eye open for research collaborations, right? You don't have to be employed by the university to collaborate on a research program, right? There's always collaboration opportunities out there. Yeah.
How do you manage your current job in academia and getting on the road to frame/start your business?
I stuck my hand up for that one. I think we kind of mostly answered it. Yeah, I'd reiterate what Mo was saying. If you can find a startup accelerator, they typically take 5% or 15% or a chunk of your company, but they will give you, if they think your idea is half decent, worth a try, they will give you a framework in which to explore and gain experience. It's a lot easier to, we call it, in our space, we call it fail fast. What that means is you learn from your experiences, and a major feature of being successful as an entrepreneur is having the flexibility to recognize you need to complete the objective of the exercise is success. How you get there means you have to be flexible, which means you don't stick to your idea, cling to it like this. You take the feedback and you modify till you actually get there. So to actually get started and get on the road to start your business, yeah, I'd highly recommend going for an incubator if this is your first company. I'd highly recommend getting an environment with other early stage entrepreneurs like Fishburners. This is probably the place in Sydney where you get that social mix to actually, hear a lot of ideas and you learn the vernacular and you can try it out in a relaxed social setting. It's so much easier to explain your idea when you're holding a beer or a glass of wine than it is getting up in front of 50 people. That's the next stage. So that would be the recommendation. Socialize your idea. Don't hang on to it. There's no point in keeping it to yourself and working away on it privately. You're far better off exposing the idea to some stress test. You want to experiment with your idea. So you got to do that. You got to do it with other people.
There's a question for Annie. saying, good to hear about your transition from health to the private sector and actually implementing real change to where it's needed. Any suggestions for an older PhD student to go from studying about implementation change to being a change agent?
Well, I love the fact that you're older, I have to say. And it's not, you know, it's just that you have another wealth of experience there, another layer. So the energy and the time that young people bring is fantastic. And I think Robert made a really important point there earlier, saying take that risk when you're young. I have 3 kids and a mortgage, and, you know, so that those risks become harder as you get older. But what you do have when you're older is this amazing wealth of experience to draw upon. So I really think it's about putting that and using that context for being a change agent, because change is really complex, and particularly when it comes with digital health, often it's not the tech. The tech can do amazing things. We all know tech can do amazing things. It's actually getting clinicians to use the tech, and that's a completely different story. Clinicians' willingness to change how they work is really hard. And it's hard because they don't teach it in universities still. They don't even teach doing telehealth in universities. It's not part of curriculums. And you know what? It's way easier just to get your patients or your clients to come and sit in a room, and then you open the door and let them in and do a face-to-face consultation. Changing and integrating digital health into your workplace requires enormous change at many different levels, at an organizational level, at a clinical level, and also you've got to be thinking about the patients, at the end user. How are you going to help them navigate whatever it is you're trying to use with them? So, but I think if you have a wealth of experience and you have understandings of different sectors, what has served me so well in this particular role is there would be few professions, health professions, I haven't worked with. So I have a good understanding of what those professions do, and therefore where telehealth could fit into that professional viewpoint. And working in a product-led company, that's a unique lens to have. I come at every problem with a different lens often than what an engineer will come at. And I think, yeah, that's what really I would invest in. You know, sell that side of you. It's important.
Thanks. And we're coming to time. I see there's a couple of questions that have been picked by some of the speakers, but we'll probably end the webinar now. I really want to thank our speakers, so Robert, Mo, Thomas, and Annie for joining us today.